welcome to the Resilient Mother podcast. I am Catherine Tyson Sewell, your host, one of your hosts, and I am sitting here not with Miss Tiffany Lorraine Galloway this evening, but bringing you great stories once again from our amazing mother community. Leslie Lew, the warrior, has decided to join us on this show. Thank you so much for joining us on the Resilient Mother podcast, Leslie.
Oh, Catherine, I am fired up to be here, and I'm going to give you my all for this interview.
Awesome. So before we even get started, I just want the audience to really just know, when we bring these stories to you, it's really just to help encourage you. It's to help you know that you're not alone. We're in this together. We're out here. We're being moms. We're living our lives. But you can learn from our stories. We can learn from your stories. And so we continue to share that with this community and this village. And so, Leslie, the warrior, you are here to talk to us about some warrior stuff. And we are all warriors in our own right. So I'm definitely really, excited about this story. Now, of course, we'd love for you to share, follow, like, subscribe, everything, so that we can continue to build this community because together we're stronger. Leslie, give us a little bit of background on your story and how you've come to name yourself the warrior.
Ooh, well, a little bit about me. I'm not who I was, right? I grew up in a very poor household, immigrant household, in an Asian household where I was taught to do everything excellently. We don't talk about these things. We hold it inside. If there are issues, we sweep it under the rug, right? And so my journey started in martial arts when I was 8 years old because I was the girl who wasn't blonde, and I got spat in the face and I got bullied. And my mom said, you know what? You're going to Taekwondo camp. And ever since then, that put me on a pathway to being a lifelong martial artist. So I'm a women's self-defense expert. I'm the founder of a company called Reclaiming Your Courage, but I developed a method called a mind, body, voice method. And we're going to talk a lot more about the warrior mindset. But fast forward to the origin story of why I even created that was when I was 19, I was that loyal friend to a fault. I had the best friend who was in an abusive relationship. We know that that's a cycle of domestic violence, of the fights, the shouting at each other, the apologies. Heard her screaming my name down the hallway. I came running, kicked down the door, something you see out of a movie. And I thought, I've got this. I've done everything that was expected of me. I learned all the techniques and the stuff, and it didn't end up that way. He made sure to hurt me in front of her. He made sure that I ended up in the hospital with a broken rib, with concussion. And, I never saw her again because of all of that guilt and the shame that she carried from not being able to kind of step in. And I don't blame her for that. But what I want to point out is the problem with the illusion of empowerment for women, okay? Self-defense is a nice foundation, right? You go to McDojo, you go to the self-defense class, you poke someone in the eye, they tell you to kick someone in the groin. But I created my method because that stuff and the pepper spray and everything you think you know about protecting yourself doesn't always work. And so I take women through a framework to take them from weak to warrior strong so that they develop a mindset that they are worth fighting for. They have the tools around how to use their voice and really teach them how to stand in their power. Like, how do you do enough to escape the situation so that you can go home to your loved ones? But I'm here to debunk the myth. Ladies, we are not invincible. We have our kids. We're here to protect our kids, but we do not go toe to toe, blow for blow with men.
Right. And I completely agree. I'm from the Caribbean, so I'm from a small island, the Cayman Islands. It's 22 miles long, and 60,000 people I grew up with. I think it's about 80,000 now. Pretty small. And, I've always kind of grown up with that, belief that I'm a woman. I can't overpower a man, right? And so I almost grew up with a feeling of fear, right? I had this very, I think it's healthy in some ways, a healthy fear, that I had to keep myself safe because, I had a cousin around the corner or a neighbor down the street or somebody's uncle or somebody that was, ready to prey on you. And I know they would never want to know that you even say these things out loud. I'm a social worker. I'm going to say them out loud because it's true. And I think that these sorts of things are old enough and it requires us to talk about it. So when you talk about the 19-year-old, that basically fought a man and got beat by a man as if you were a man, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I also know that you had shared that this kind of gender-based violence thing started before that even happened to you in your life when you were a powerless child. And so voices like yours are definitely needed. And on the Resilient Mother podcast, we want to bring stories like that because we want to build awareness of how important our voice is and how we don't need to shy away from topics that people might say, oh, you be a nice girl and you keep that quiet. Don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. This is one of those subjects, right?
This is absolutely one of those subjects. And I'm not really good at fluff either. If you want to be a resilient mom, we have to acknowledge that our pain and our trauma is real. That fear you had growing up probably kept you alive, but it is very valid and it is very real. And the reason why we want to confront that as resilient moms is we don't want to project those same fears onto our children.
Right.
And I bring that up because a lot of mothers that I work with fall into a couple of categories. They either fall into the worry wart mama bear. Okay. Right. Do you remember the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears?
Yeah.
Right? It's too hot. This is too cold. The bed is too soft. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to use that analogy. So number one of the type of women that I coach and I work with, number one, worry wart mama bear uses her size as an excuse.
Yeah.
I am too short. No one's going to mess with me. I'm fast. I can run. Or I'm overweight. Self-defense doesn't apply to me.
Right.
Okay. Every excuse in the book. But the problem with that type of worry wart mama bear mentality is that you are afraid of the world. And so when your child is actually legitimately going through something like being bullied at school, they don't want to stress. They don't want to add on to your stress because you are projecting your fears onto them.
Right.
And I know this because I coach young people and I am here because the bigger risk is that these young people are starting to harm themselves.
Right.
Okay. The second type of mother that I come across is tough love mama bear. Tough love mama bear probably was bullied growing up, experienced something really intense. So she likes to fight fire with fire. She likes to tell her kid, if somebody hits you, you hit them back.
Hit them back. Mm-hmm.
But what happens is that you're perpetuating that cycle.
Right.
You're not actually getting to the root of the problem. And then lastly, I'm here to say that there is a type of clueless bear mama that I come across in my work that's like, oh, I live in a safe neighborhood. I don't need to learn anything about self-defense. It doesn't apply to me.
Right.
If you are a woman in this world, the reality is when we wake up every day, whether it's on the streets, in the boardroom, toxic family members, self-defense is at every focal point of our lives.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And being aware, I think awareness is so important because, I didn't want to raise my daughter with the fear, just like this debilitating fear, but awareness, we have carnivals a lot in our country, right? Carnivals mean, you see the girls, you see the carnival outfits, they're barely there. And I remember when my daughter had decided she wanted to be, do a carnival, and she got her little outfit. It's like $500. It's about this much material. So, and me having a talk with her, listen, I know you guys like, you're drinking, because she was over 18, 19, she's drinking. I said, those guys are feeding you alcohol. They love it because, but now if you're drunk, remember, you're drunk and you're half naked. Okay. So I'm just saying, and that doesn't mean that a fully clothed woman is not at risk, because she absolutely is. But you add that dynamic to it, you're definitely not putting yourself in a good situation. So my daughter came home that evening and she was so distraught because she's like, you're so right. We were trying to get to our car, and we were down this little lane, and there were some guys behind us, and they were catcalling, and they were, like gaining on us. And it was about 4 of us. So we all just kind of like grabbed each other and ran, because, but just feeling that terror, like at like 19 years old, to say, oh my goodness, like, what is that? And I'm saying, yeah, because you have to be aware at all times that a woman in this world, we have to keep ourselves safe, because we're not the problem. The problem is walking around thinking it's okay to behave that way towards women. And so voices like yours and what you're doing out there is so important. So it's what you're doing, but we all need to be supporting it. We all need to be a part of that movement, because we need to be talking about it. We need to shut that down, because it's terrible. Young girls are being victimized every day,
every day,
like,
and they want to harm themselves. And more times than none, I mean, you're a social worker, the amount of suicides that occur as a result of all of this pain. That's why I'm raising my frequency here. If I got to shout it out and say it, because let's use the example of your daughter. Thank goodness you brought awareness to her. Now my role is how do I support her? I'm going to teach her 4 things: push, pull, fall down, get up. What to do if someone's trying to push her off balance, if she was intoxicated. Secondly, what to do if someone's going to grab her and try to abduct her. Next, how to properly fall so that she doesn't have a concussion. And next, how does she get back up? Those are the 4 practical things, along with everything else I teach. I'm not here to show you anything fancy. I want to show you how to get home.
Just your basics. Make it home tonight.
Make it home. But what I find the problem is, a lot of people don't know the basics, because we are only. I have women who tell me, I've never been taught about anything about self-defense, or I took the class and it was fun and I learned the thing, but they don't make any connection. How does this apply to anything? Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, when I was growing up, and from what I see, even, I mean, like I said, the islands is still, they're not as progressive as a big city. But when I was growing up, and the same things I see is that if you're athletic, you're doing stuff like that. But if you're artsy, you're in, you're in plays and musicals. You see what I mean? So there's like there's a box for everyone. So I wouldn't have fallen into a box of, I need to learn that because I wasn't athletic at all. You see what I mean? So, and I think that's wrong. That's like, everybody should learn that.
Everybody. And that is why the people I work with, and most recently I did a workshop in Oklahoma City, 3 hours. I had participants as young as 7. Okay. That's great. As 7. And I've worked in communities, combating Asian hate crimes, elders that have been attacked in their community just by being Asian. I have literally taught them how to defend themselves with a cane. Wow. So and that is why I'm here to say, you think self-defense is for the athletic person, but why is it I also have worked with people that have taken all those cardio kickboxing classes, have this athleticism, but they still believe and are victimized. Okay. Yeah. And they believe that I'm not worth it. So they just surrender and let the assault happen. Yeah. Because their mindset is not that of a warrior. They blame themselves. They're worried about the victim blaming that will happen to them. Right. But I'm like, but you're the one that's being raped.
Right. Well, funny that you would say that. When we talk about predators, child molesters, people that are victimizing children. Uh, Sometimes the protection is for the adult that's committed the crime against the child. Sometimes it's for the child or the parent of that child to stop making such a big thing about it. I mean, this is a respectable man. He's a good person in society. He goes to church. He's a nice guy. He's a husband. He's a father, and you're just going to ruin his life. And that is so misguided because the rage should be turned the other way to that guy that we trusted, that we thought was a great person and a good father and husband, that he's doing something like that. So I think that and that's kind of like the victim shaming in a sense, maybe not exactly shaming the victim, but by trying to keep the victim quiet because they're going to ruin someone's life. That's pretty prominent in a lot of communities. And I think the Caribbean community is one of those communities where that is pretty prominent. And that's so sad. And so here's, the young person or the parents of that young person having to hold that to their chest or get over it or swallow it or whatever, as opposed to being able to normalize that that's not what should be happening. You're the person that's wrong. And that absolutely should be something that we're against. Teachers, for instance, there are male teachers that, they have their young students sitting on their desk. I remember growing up and there was always a teacher that had young girls sitting on their desk. And for some reason, it was weird to me. I never did that. And that teacher didn't like me. It didn't matter to me. It's just that I knew something about sitting on the desk didn't seem right.
Right. And what you're depicting is something that I see all over the world. So I'm a international keynote speaker. I travel all the time. What you're depicting also happens in Kenya. So part of the work I do is humanitarian work. Went to a rape and rehabilitation center where these girls as young as 3 have been victimized by elders in the community, right?
Wow.
So I'm there, and then there's babies. And I'm like, wait.
The disgracefulness.
These are the result of the attacks that have happened. So something I want to drive home connected to what you're talking about is these girls have not been taught even about basic female anatomy. Right. So being able to help educate them, to teach them about things around consent. And so when they started to hear this story of warrior, they said, I want to stand beside the warrior. It resonates with them. In history, there's so many women in history who were warriors, okay? And so I drove that point to them, and they started asking me questions like, this teacher, he asked if he could insert my tampon for me. Is that is that normal? They don't know. They don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, he's offering help. Yeah,
offering
inappropriate, but yeah.
But the other thing about taxation around sanitary pads is they can't afford it. So then the men are like, I'll give you the money for the sanitary pads if you have sex with me.
Right.
But my point here is that part of being a warrior is you uplift other women, you rise together, and we hold space for these young girls. We make it safe for them to be able to talk about these things that they're thinking about. And in my experience, in the typical dojo or self-defense class, there's not room for that. You just go there to learn the stuff. But really, in my work, it's about, before I even teach you anything physical, I haven't even earned your trust yet.
Right.
I want to co-create a space where this is safe. What are some things that you are experiencing? What are things that are on your mind, right? And you would be amazed just by asking these questions to really young girls, what starts coming out?
Yeah.
And to me, that work of asking the hard questions, listening even when it is difficult, is what these girls need. And so that's what Warrior Strong is to me, is that the only way in which I can do that is the framework that I take my clients through is what I had to take through myself when I knew I was going to become a mother. I'm like, I do not want to perpetuate this for my daughter. We know
Right.
biologically trauma impacts our kids' development. So I
Right.
said, no more. I will
Yeah.
not let my daughter live in a world where she feels like she can't express a boundary or push back.
Yeah. I hope this becomes a global movement because it's so necessary. And it's necessary because every single community, I believe, will have stories like this from women. I think that we've been seen as second class citizens in many, 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 many ways. It's funny that you talk about being a part of an Asian community. I'm a part of a people of color community. I'm a part of a Caribbean community. I mean, there are so many different elements. Not only are we women, but we have all of these other things that kind of put us in, if we're going to start saying where do we fall in society. But at the top of that has always been a man. It's
Yes.
always been a man, and that's not criticizing. That's not, I'm not trying to open this up for people to push back that we're being negative towards men, because it's not being negative at all. But when we are it, when we're experiencing these things, it's not right. It's not fair. And I think what I always like to ask men, like when men are saying, honey, darling, sweetie, and you're working with them, they're not your partner, they're not your husband, but they're putting their hand on you and saying, sweetie, and they do that a lot more in the islands than they do in America, trust me. My thing will always be, would you like someone to do that to your daughter? Would you like someone to do that to your sister? Would you like someone to do that to your wife? And when I frame it like that, I get like this aha in their eyes, like, no, exactly. Well, I'm someone's wife. I'm someone's mother. I'm someone's sister. I'm someone's daughter. So if you could just step away from whatever it is you think that I am when you look at me, or the way you're relating to me, and just think this is somebody's mother, wife, sister, daughter, and I would not want that to happen to my own sister, mother, wife, daughter, because they're very clear when you ask them that question, right?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
it's so powerful. That's a warrior right there. You
Yeah.
embody that warrior spirit there. And what I want to go on to say is that I educate these girls and say, not all men are bad. We
Right.
have
No.
we have allies. If we're talking about women empowerment, there are men who are allies because they are fathers. They want their daughters to have a brighter future. So I don't just have the conversation with young girls. I have young boys in other countries that are like,
Yes.
but don't forget about us. And I'm
Right.
like, I have a son, so I want to model for him and say, okay, son, part of this is honoring and respecting, allowing space, asking for
Right.
consent around touch. I teach my
Right.
son that at a very young age. And so,
Absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely.
being able to tell men, and here's the thing that I want to advocate for, because when it comes to physical self-defense, men mean well. But what I'd like to say is that empowerment comes, ladies, when you realize that nobody's coming to save you. And what I
Right.
mean by that is a lot of the women that I work with expect a bystander, their partner, somebody to step in and do the thing. It goes hand in hand with my story and trying to protect my friend. But if we turn inward and embrace that warrior spirit that we're worth fighting for, we have everything that it takes. We are the warrior. It's
Right.
disempowering when you look outside of yourself for someone to come and rescue you.
Yeah.
You keep yourself safe.
Yeah.
You have exactly what it takes. And I say that so genuinely well because men mean well, but I'm like, you are not with your daughter every second of the day. How
Right.
you would handle the situation, it becomes more about them and their abilities
Right. Right.
rather than empowering the young girl. So it
Yeah.
takes it to a whole other level of like, this is what I would do if I was
Yeah.
there, or
Yeah.
I'll get my hands on that person. No, no,
Right.
no.
And
Please
and
stop.
and when and when it's done, if something has been done, you getting your hands on that person does not change it. It still happened. you can't erase it. So to be proactive is the best approach, right? Before something happens, or knowing what to do at the time that something is happening to you, but having your mind in
Exactly.
the right place as well.
Your mind in the right place and not waiting until something happens to learn the thing. So if you're
Right,
watching this, do not wait until something happens to you to say, hey, I should start maybe
right,
thinking about self-defense.
right.
No,
Yeah.
the case I'm making is that no, these threats exist for us now, no
Yes,
matter
yes,
from early childhood to our elder
yes.
years. This is part of my lifelong work.
Yeah,
This is our life. So you got to start somewhere. And so
yeah,
in my content, when people follow me, I'm like, look, let me show how. I have a free 5-minute training, how to protect yourself with a stainless steel water bottle. It
yeah.
takes you 5 minutes.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But you got to
And,
learn the skills. You actually have to learn the things, the way to use your voice, to actually create a boundary, to physically leverage yourself over someone trying to overpower you.
right. So, so this is what you do. Is this what you do full time? Is this your job, or is this just a part of your job? Because I know as mothers we have 10 jobs or more.
We do have 10 jobs. So I still work in my full-time corporate life. I'm a solopreneur, and I do have Reclaiming Your Courage. I speak
Okay.
internationally, but I'm also the co-founder of a global women's empowerment movement. You mentioned earlier, I hope this goes global. I'm also the co-founder of a movement called Warrior Queens Rise.
Okay. Awesome. So if people were interested in you possibly coming out to their school to do a training or a woman's group or something, you're available for those sorts of things. How would they? Yeah.
Absolutely.
How would they
So
get in
on
contact with you?
Facebook, Leslie Lew, Lew, almost like the Liu Tang clan. On
Okay.
Instagram, Reclaiming Your Courage. Consume my content. There's a lot of videos, how to escape an Uber safely, little tidbits. If any of
Awesome.
this resonates with you, send me a DM. Or if you're thinking, I have women who've reached out to me, I'd love for you to teach me how to protect myself from somebody trying to pull my hijab. Will you
Yeah.
come to our mosque? Right?
Right.
Like there are communities. So if you are a community, an organization, um, groups of women who don't feel safe, I absolutely want to talk to you, because this is exactly what I do is work on the ground with communities that don't feel safe.
Yeah, and they'd be able to talk to you about your rates and all that stuff and what it would take to get you there. I mean, I'd love for you to just you come over to my island. It's gonna be you're gonna cause a big stink. Trust me, it's gonna be problems. You're gonna come on the weekend, and on Monday it's gonna be a lots of problems. Because they're gonna be like, well, so and so and so.
And you know what? I'm up for the challenge. I'll create some earthquakes with my voice. I'm gonna disrupt some stuff, and I'm okay with
Yes,
that.
I love it. I love it. I think we're in a time in our world where everything goes and everything should not go. And so the things that what we're talking about are falling through the cracks even more than before, because they're falling through the cracks of normalcy, which is crazy. I've never, when I look at I guess a child molester. I think I heard something a few months ago that child molesting it's not to be known as a crime. It's that person is attracted to minors. I'm like, what? What world are we in?
Yeah,
Is this world upside down?
yeah, and if you're watching this and you're someone who's experienced something, right? Like some feelings are coming up, I want you to know that part of a warrior spirit is you are the non-negotiable.
Yes.
You are the non-negotiable because you are worth fighting for.
Yes.
So to not let someone else, systems, anyone else make you feel small. You
Yes.
take up that space and stand in your power. So if any of this resonated with you, I'd
Yes.
love to hear from you.
Yeah.
I'd love to
And,
hear from
and
you.
tell someone. And if that person is not taking you serious, tell someone else. Like find someone that you can tell that you trust. It could be I tell people this all the time. It could be someone from your church. It could be someone from your school. It could be a counselor. It could be first you try your parent. But if it's not that person, don't just leave it there, because adults we are scared of hearing things, and we are, we make bad calls sometimes, but you absolutely, when you feel that in yourself that it's not right, more than likely it's not right. So you tell someone about that.
It's not right. And instead of going into that old school pattern of like, we don't talk about that, if someone comes to you in a very vulnerable state or something happened to be true, you tell them, I believe you.
Yeah.
And we need more of the I believe you rather than
Yes.
What did you do? What did you
Yes.
wear?
Yes. And for our parent community that's a part of this and watching this, if your child tells you something, regardless of how uncomfortable it makes you feel, regardless of how uncomfortable Mr. So-and-so is going to feel, believe your child. Err on the side of caution by believing them first. Don't not believe them first. Don't let that be the default. And be that safe space for your children to be able to talk to you about anything that's happening. And that means your boys too, because boys are also at risk all the time. And because they're supposed to be big and tough, and they're not supposed to cry, and they're not supposed to complain, foolishness that we've also taught them, they tend to end up being victims quicker, and feel like, well, this is what I have, this is what I have to deal with. And no, you don't have to deal with that. So definitely, Leslie, we're going to ask you that when your show comes out, we're talking about identity, we're talking about resiliency. We want you to share us with your community as well, because as long as we're beating bigger drums and more drums, that's when the word is going to come out. Yeah. And we're all wanting to be on board for a warrior spirit, because it's necessary. It's necessary for our children. It's necessary for the adults that we're raising, because that's what we're raising. Our children are future adults. And if they're raised traumatized, then what type of adults are we raising, right? So we need to have those safe spaces for them. And I appreciate what you're doing. I really appreciate what you're doing in your world. And I just want us to continue to do it together. And thank you so much for sharing that with us on the Resilient Mother podcast. Thank you so, so much for that. And thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for being a warrior.
Thank you. It takes a warrior to know a warrior, and we rise together. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I can't wait to meet you. I'm going to meet you one day. One day.
Yeah.
I'm going to trust me. Yes. And I say that all the time when we meet these beautiful, amazing women that share their stories. I'm like, these are our friends, man, So yes. Thanks so much. And thank you